Greetings, my name's Guy Dauncey, and this is the show called Change the World, where, as you may know if you follow the show regularly, I like to invite guests on who share my vision and for a positive future, have a bit of passion about them, some big, bold ideas for how we can make a better world, and we don't spend too much time moaning and groaning. You'll be pleased to know. If you like moaning and groaning, try another channel. My guest today is Ben Geselbracht from the Nanaimo Recycling Exchange, and we're going to talk zero waste. But to introduce you, Ben, you're a social entrepreneur, lives in Nanaimo, an advocate for local action for a more sustainable future, man to my own heart there, working on the campaign to get Nanaimo to invest in a progressive, non-profit, zero-waste recycling facility. You've also worked in government, non-profit, the private sector, BSc in biology and ecology, MA in counselling, been involved in the cooperative studies at UVic, founder of the non-profit community development cooperative MyCDC, and on the board of the Recycling Exchange. So we need to talk a little about what the Recycling Exchange is in Nanaimo, and then the bigger goal of what does zero waste mean for all of us. So jump right in. How did you first get involved in all this?
Well, that's an interesting question. I became involved in the Nanaimo Recycling Exchange like most Nanaimo residents. I had some items that needed recycled, yeah, and I work as an arborist as well, so I was bringing a load of wood chips to be brought for composting, and went in there and was pleased that it really opened my eyes of all the different things that you were able to recycle, and it was right in the middle of town, and that's where I first was introduced to it.
How long ago was that? That's
about, I'd say, 4 years ago now.
Okay.
And then there was a conference on zero waste that my partner, Larissa, actually was helping to...
Yeah, Ian Gartshaw was helping to organize
exactly.
that. Yes.
It sort of emerged out of there was a proposed incineration plant, and so there's a movement in opposition to that, and so there's a conference on zero waste, which is an alternative way to deal with our waste and our recycling.
Yeah.
I went to that conference, was blown away by the vision by it. It fit really in line with my understanding of ecology and how systems work when they're healthy, and great vision for a healthy urban center. So from that, I got more involved and was eventually invited onto the board, and then recently got pulled into this redevelopment of the Nanaimo Recycling Exchange to make a new facility.
Yeah.
So what the Recycling Exchange is, it's a comprehensive one-stop drop for the full spectrum of recyclable materials.
Everything?
Everything.
Wow.
So there's a lot of materials that you can collect that make money, but the Nanaimo Recycling Exchange also accepted things like hard plastics, different types of plastic wrap, commercial styrofoam that have no commercial value. Yeah. And so they used the revenue that they got from the items that they received to subsidize the items that no one else took. But in addition to that, they also, out of the center, it's like a zero waste advocacy center. Right. So they run public education and outreach.
So how does the stuff that they're collecting compare to the regional district and the Nanaimo Center on Cedar Road, what they're collecting?
So the landfill at Cedar Road basically collects recyclable items, and then the refuse, the residuals they call it. The recyclable items that they collect are mostly wood waste, metals, and I think that there might be a couple other items of these, the more from industrial operations.
In the Cowichan Valley, where I live, I go to the site on Peerless Road, south of Ladysmith, and they've got a large range of stuff that you can take in there. They're really helpful, right?
Exactly, and that's one of the main arguments is Nanaimo doesn't have that. And, and the regional district actually has set a 90% diversion rate goal. So we're at about 68%. The Cowichan Valley has actually recently surpassed Nanaimo, which...
They boast.
Exactly.
You know, I was looking at the stats for the whole of BC today. It lists all of the major areas. The top 3 in the province are the Nanaimo, CVRD, and the CRD in Victoria.
Innovation Island, that's right,
But even then, the volume of the stuff we're still churning through, we all know that we're drowning under waste.
Yeah, exactly.
We're drowning in plastic.
And we're at the point now, like once you get to about 65%, you really do need to change the policies from what they've been in the past to push it forward. And so public funding is necessary because there's items that just cost money, and you need to establish different infrastructure. And also the methodology, the operational model of how it's done needs to shift, because you really need this one-stop drop convenience to make sure that people will use it.
So let me play devil's advocate to that. Like, we are at the recycling center I go to south of Ladysmith. They take soft plastics. So in a kitchen we have a bin with a soft plastic. And I shouldn't feel this, but half of me feels, oh, it's not so bad using all this. It's going to be recycled somewhere. So we're not reducing that stuff because it can be recycled. We need to learn to reduce, right? You showed me a pyramid in the zero waste, a big triangle, right? Talk me through that.
Exactly. So within the zero waste strategy, there is a hierarchy of highest best use of material. So basically at the very bottom, the worst use of material is sort of this linear system where you use something and then it goes straight through consumption and then into the landfill or incineration. So up the hierarchy are different strategies that make the best use of the material in terms of conserving its energy and using the least amount of resources.
So each level gets slightly better.
Exactly. And so up from incineration and landfilling is things like recycling, things like reusing. And then there's a bunch of materials that there is no recyclable market, or they're not reusable after a certain lifetime. And what do you do with those? And so in a real zero waste system, you've got an ability to be able to look at what is getting to that point where you can't do anything with it, and then from that create policies and public education so that people refuse them or are disincentivized for actually purchasing them in the first place. And that is the necessary part that's higher up of refusing. And in that model of where you have the ability to analyze they call it the residual material, that's where a really important component is, so that maybe some materials of packaging are absolutely necessary, but if they're designed that there's no other use of it, you go tell your manufacturers and you put it out to the public, hey, we need to figure out something. This stimulates jobs and research, and you can redesign the actual packaging.
So I came across a thing today which I sent you about what they're doing for plastic water bottles in Norway, which I hadn't seen before, and they're just managing to recycle over 90% of all their water bottles.
And 97%.
97%, just stunning. And every water bottle, the manufacturer are paying fees, and the more gets recycled, the less the fee is. And then once it's past 90%, they pay no fee. And the user pays a fee. So every time they return it, they get that back. And they suddenly got almost complete compliance with this new system. And everyone's going to visit them and think, how do you do this? What's the magic, right?
Right on. That's such a good example of like incentivization, and that's one of the main tools of government to promote the positive behavior and zero waste, is incentivizing through financial incentives or. And
there's a store on Salt Spring. I haven't been to it. It's called Green. It's a grocery store where the entire grocery store is zero waste.
Oh, nice.
So whatever you're buying, you learn to bring your own. You've got the bulk containers, and you bring your own container with you, and the liquids into jars, and there's no plastic bags. There's nothing there at all, and you learn to retrain your consumer behavior to bring the jars and reuse them. So that to me would be normal for all our stuff in the future.
I would love to see more of that in Nanaimo for sure, and up and down the island.
And when you go to Chinatown down in Vancouver, and they've got the stores laid out, there's no bags for anything. It just nothing pre-packaged. And now you can buy some things and you get one apple and it's put in a bag which goes inside another bag, and you tear your hair out. Like, this is...
Well, you're right. I mean, a lot of the technologies for zero waste were used in the past about 50, 60 years ago, and you're not reinventing the wheel for a lot of things.
So I understand that about 20, 30 years ago, the average British Columbian would produce about 1,000 kilograms of domestic waste a year on the municipal level. That's a ton. And we've now got it down in the Cowichan Valley in Nanaimo to 350, 360 kilograms kind of level. And in one town in Italy, they got it down to 147 kilograms.
I forget the name of that town. It starts with a C.
Scaponora.
Scaponora
in Tuscany.
Right.
And in just 3 years, they changed from 80% being thrown away to like 20%. So they've got a massive change.
And that story in Caponora is a real great zero waste story, because it encapsulates one of the main tenets and motivators to really make it happen. That's community engagement. And that town is so proud of the fact that they are creating less waste and are doing something sustainable, and it's become really part of the fabric of the culture.
So I got a little list of the things they're doing. They reduced the waste going to the landfill from starting at 82%, you know, they got it down to much lower, 146 kilograms. They have people using tap water instead of bottled water, right? Doing away with disposable cutlery and flatware in public buildings, including schools, so no disposable knives and forks anymore. Distributing cloth shopping bags to all 18,000 households and 5,000 to businesses. Stocking reusable diapers and sanitary products in pharmacies. Proactive political nudges leading to residents becoming more aware and able to change their consumption habits. And a zero waste grocery store with 250 locally sourced food and drink items in bulk, no packaging.
Amazing.
In a community of about 40,000 people.
Amazing.
So shows what can be done.
With the right political will, change can happen incredibly quickly. And a great example is in San Francisco. You know, with the water example, now they have a regulation. When you build a new building, it has to have a fountain that you're able to refill with the refillable water.
Right.
But San Francisco, by law, in 15 years, in 2000 they were recycling. They had a 50% diversion from landfill. In 2015, it was 80%. And they did that by following very clearly the zero waste hierarchy of change, implementing it down into different policies and incentives and investment in infrastructure. And in, I think, the 90s or even earlier than that, there was a proposal for an incinerator. And this incinerator was going to get them to 75% diversion.
Right. Sounds good. Sounds wonderful.
And there was such mass protest against it, and they said, no, we're going to follow a zero waste methodology. We're going to go for source separation. We're going to collect recyclables from households. We're going to incentivize you know, recycling habits and reusable habits. We're going to make these building laws. We're going to make, one of the most critical ones was making source separation recycling a bylaw for commercial buildings. Right. Which we haven't done yet here, at least in Nanaimo. It's in the proposition, but that alone should change about 10% diversion if it's done properly.
If I'm running a business, what does it mean for me in terms of how I run the business if this is the law?
If you're running a business, what it would require is that any waste product that you produce, you're required to separate it into the different recycling streams.
Right.
So depending on what the pickup capacity is, so for example, with the blue bins, there might be 8 different items, variety items that you can put into that. You've got the blue bin, then you have your compost bin, and then you have your residual garbage bin. And there might be another one as well. Like some places have a red bin for glass and certain other items.
I can imagine some businesses needing pretty big bins. You've got a lot of throughput of stuff and things happening.
Exactly, and so the strategy for different sizes of business and what businesses can change. And sometimes curbside pickup or pickup at the business isn't always the best model. Like there's a lot of plumbers and mobile businesses where centralized location drop-off is required, and that's a huge gap that the Nanaimo Recycling Exchange was filling, was this drop-off for mobile businesses.
Right. So Nanaimo, you told me, is now setting a goal of 90% waste reduction. By when? They set a date to it?
I believe it is, I think, 2030. I actually don't know the exact date of what
Quite frankly, between you and me, when someone sets a date for 2050, it's like saying someone else can deal with it. All of the climate stuff with the goals, it's like pass the buck. If it's got to be before 2030 for any goal to be meaningful, right?
You always need a sense of urgency.
Deadlines
are good
on
for
our
people.
shift, not our children's shift. So, do you think they're going to get there? What's it going to take for Nanaimo to get there?
I 100% believe that 90% diversion is very attainable. Right. A lot of people say, oh, this is a lofty ideal, you'll never get to that. But if San Francisco can get from 50 to 80 in 15 years, they're a huge city. Getting to 80% is not going to be that hard. If you make the rule that commercial places have source separation and recycling, then you incentivize the different recycling organizations for pickup.
Collection everywhere.
Everywhere compost is collected. And then what is really necessary, which we don't have in our proposal, but a place in Halifax does, is when material comes to landfill, they have a final sort
Yes.
and separation and then research. So they take the material after it's gone through all the systems and they give it another final
even the
sort.
stuff that normally just gets dumped in the pit.
Exactly. All plastic bags are opened up. They take it out.
Right.
Then things like kitty litter and diapers, it goes to be stabilized, that organic material, and dealt with. All the other recycles are moved. And anything that's not recyclable, not reusable, and not used, that actually goes and is analyzed for the different material contents. All that data is collected, and then there's a whole nother research program that figures out how can we deal with this. Are there markets available for these type of items?
So that leads to a tricky question, which I don't know if you have the answer to, but most of our recycling was going to China.
Yeah.
China then, just 6 months ago, said enough, and they stopped a lot of stuff coming in.
Yeah.
And I gather they still accept British Columbia's stuff because it's better sorted and it's cleaner.
Yeah. Well, this is exactly what happened. It's actually wonderful news for recycling and moving towards a circular green economy, because what China has done, and in their central planning committees has said that we want a circular green economy, meaning
for
what we produce.
Whole enormous country.
Exactly, and they're executing. You know, when you have a government like that,
dictatorship. You can do it. Yes,
we can do it. I think through a grassroots way. However, what it's going to force to do is that North America is going to have to figure out how to deal with its own waste, and it's going to be right in our face. Like we just saw recently, the commodity market for cardboard bottom out. Nobody could get rid of their cardboard.
Yeah.
And it's going to put pressure on remanufacturing to be localized in North America, hopefully somewhere on the island, in Vancouver, where we're going to be remanufacturing plastics, cardboard, metals.
So you know what a straw bale house is?
Yeah.
House made of straw, compacted in a bale.
Yeah.
You can compact cardboard into bales.
Yeah.
Build houses from it.
Yeah. Cardboard, styrofoam. I mean, the creativity that's possible for other different economic loops is endless, and it really just is a matter of deciding that that's the direction we're going to go. And you know, all effective systems go in this way. If you look at the biological world, every piece of waste is a resource for the next cycle.
It's totally recycled again. Yeah.
And we really need to look at our cities as just a big organism that has a metabolism, and it's got inputs and outputs, and we just need to link them together more efficiently. Like what I love in San Francisco is that all their compost, they have a way of making sure there's no contamination, and it gets put out into all the vineyards and the fruit producing areas just on the outsides of the city, and it just gets fed back into the community.
I know that the contamination is a really big issue, because we had friends in a house across the road, and well, I was the landlord of a house across the road, let's be honest, and their blue bin was packed out one day, and so I looked into it, and it was full of things that didn't ought to be in it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I've heard them say that an entire truckload has to be sent to the landfill because of too much contamination. So 50 households doing the rest thing can be ruined by one household not giving a damn.
100%.
So us learning to correctly separate our wastes.
Yeah. And this is what the Nanaimo Recycling Exchange, for a very long time, 25 years, has been a major part in public education, going out there to the elementary schools, high schools, and training the community how to recycle. And that has such a large economic benefit, because as soon as you can produce clean, uncontaminated recycling streams, all of a sudden that material becomes a resource and it's worth money.
I'm dreaming up a quiz show. It'd be difficult to do on this show because we need about 10 guests.
Yeah.
And it'd be a quiz show, and I have a whole pile of recyclables. Yeah. And I bring it forward, and who can press the button where they know where it goes? Yeah. And they win something if the winner who could get the best recycling.
Yeah.
Right?
That'd be a great game.
So switching gear, this thing about incineration. I mean, I see things coming across my Facebook feed. Oh, Sweden incinerates; they're the best place in the world. Yeah. What are the pros and cons of incineration? Instead of bothering with all this source separation, just burn it, turn it into electricity.
Exactly, and this is probably the most spun proposal that's out there, and incineration all around is a bad idea. And just from the very basics of incentivization, you have to pay a large sum of money to build the infrastructure for incineration.
Right. Yes.
And based on that contract, usually with a private company, is that you need to guarantee a certain amount of waste gets there so that they can produce the energy to pay this thing off.
Otherwise they can't pay their debts on the investment.
Exactly. So now you've created a system for waste that you're incentivizing people generating waste and making sure to deal with this thing that you spent a lot of public money on.
Public advertising. You're not generating enough waste. Please throw some more stuff away, right?
And that's not even to talk about the nano particulates that come out of it.
Dangerous stuff.
Yeah, and also the ash that's produced from these incinerators. It's still landfill. It's toxic, and you have to landfill it. So I don't know what the percentage was, but when San Francisco was looking at it, the incinerator was still going to produce 25% of weight of toxic ash. Yeah.
So a friend of mine who's an engineer in Victoria went to Sweden.
Yeah.
And he went to talk to the engineers who ran their incineration system and their recycling. And he said, if you had a chance to do this again, did it work for you? And they said, no, we would not do it again because it destroys the value of the materials too much. We get more value out of them by having the source separation and full recycling.
Well, once you spend all this time extracting the raw material, be it oil, be it metal, be it wood, and then you have this product, and then if it can be used again, as opposed to burning it and returning it back to a totally useless item, you lose so much energy that way. It's incredibly wasteful, and no efficient economic system operates that way. And you're right, unfortunately places like Sweden and places that build incinerators, the technology is maybe improved because now you got this incinerator and you got to improve it because it's producing toxic fumes. People are complaining, so you got all these scrubbers in this, and I'm sure but it's just like throwing good money after bad.
Yeah. So I got a little story to tell, which is a parable, right? Because when I first arrived in Victoria, I'll come to what happened. But up until 1910 in Victoria, the waste was taken down to the low tide line and left on the beach for the tide to take it away.
Yeah.
Then people began to think, it's not very cool. So in 1910, they said, let's put it in a barge and we'll take it a kilometre offshore and dump it in the ocean.
Yeah.
By 1950, they thought, that's not very cool. Let's dig a big hole in the ground and dump it in a hole in the ground. And by 1990, the hole was full up at Heartland. So they drained a lake called Heel Lake to make another hole in the ground. And that's going to be full soon. Yeah. And then now we're saying, well, dumping in a hole in the ground is not very cool. Zero waste.
Yeah.
So within a century, we got this trajectory from complete, let the tide take it away, to zero waste. That could be seen as a really positive way of looking at it.
And scary is because when you realize you've run out of holes, then it's like panic.
Yeah.
And it's crazy in this. I don't know if people have seen this new National Geographic.
Hold it up to the camera a bit.
But it's all on plastics, and it's basically saying that there's 6.9 billion tons of plastics that are now dispersed in the environment, and it's showing up in animals' stomachs. It's killing a countless amount of wildlife and showing up in hordes on beaches.
Why has it got an iceberg on the cover?
I think that because we're really just seeing the tip of the iceberg of the problem.
What we see is the floating plastic. The rest is all hidden away there.
And a lot of times is that, I think, I forget the percentage, but you don't see it as much of a problem because 90% of the volume gets broken down in such micro nanoparticles.
And you sent me a photograph of a whale that had died and been dissected, and out of the whale's stomach they pulled these massive sheets of plastic.
I think the poor whale thought it was jellyfish, and it was like
suffocated on them.
Yeah, no, it is an issue, and we're definitely getting to the point that we're realizing that we have to deal with it in a different way.
Yeah, there's a shock level about it. Like, can we really be quite so disgusting in the way we behave, right?
Yeah, and that idea of keep filling up holes, we're still dealing with that still. Like, one of the major impediments right now in the economics of recycling is that it's still cheaper for companies to collect all the material in one bin, it gets but be able to ship it to landfills in Oregon.
Right.
And a lot of times for a municipality, it still looks like, oh, hey, we've got great diversion, our landfill's not filling up, we don't have to worry about it.
In the Cowichan Valley, where we have among the best programs in the province, I was speaking to the person at this Peerless Road Centre. I said, where does the residuals go? There is no landfill in the Cowichan CVRD. They ship it down to Washington State. So now I'm thinking everything I throw in the garbage is going in a truck, it's going in a big container, it's going on a ferry, it's going to Washington. So I think, oh my goodness, right? So now my motivation to never throw anything away is way stronger because of the ridiculousness of shipping it all that distance just to throw it in a hole in America.
And there's pros and cons for that policy of shipping your residuals, but Nanaimo actually has done even something more progressive in that they are changing the market incentives so that companies recycling is incentivized to go through companies they're incentivized to provide source separation, and in return, they get a cheaper cost to bring the residuals to the landfill. And why that's progressive is that Nanaimo can track exactly how much the municipality is using, what type of materials it is. It's a bit of this sort of monitoring system.
Yes.
So then policies can be developed, making bans on certain types of materials, yes, or incentivizing companies to provide different types of packaging.
Right. So even if the big project at the Nanaimo Recycling Exchange doesn't go ahead, I really hope you continue as an educational force, mm-hmm, and as a non-profit force to encourage the municipality and the regional, mm-hmm, district to step up and do their best. Mm-hmm. In Victoria, there is no non-profit focused on waste. Mm-hmm. And so the CRD's been drifting at around the same level for, mm-hmm, 10 years without, mm-hmm, much improvement, because, mm-hmm, no one's holding their feet to the fire. Mm-hmm. And I can picture that idea I have of a TV quiz show. You could do that as the recycling, make it a big annual fun thing with, yeah, prizes, who can get the, yeah, best knowledge on recycling, right?
Yeah. And this is a very important point that a lot of people don't realize, is that nonprofits and advocacy is critical in mobilizing public participation, yeah, and using it. And in Nanaimo, because the recycling stage was in a central location, there was 800 to 1,500 people using it a day.
Wow, yeah.
If you wanted to train somebody experientially, they came in there, just like me when I first started, saw all the different waste streams. There was, yes, somebody there that showed you what to do. You could ask them what products they, yeah, took or didn't take, and wham, you were educated. And all of a sudden, my expectation of what I expected could be recycled went through the roof.
Yes.
And that puts pressure on every other recycling organization.
But also, a non-profit can think outside the box and think rapidly, whereas if you're in a big bureaucracy, you've got middle manager, and you've got higher manager, and, yeah, you've got protocols, and you've got to...
Exactly, and non-profit means that you're not taking any of the surplus revenue. You, yes, immediately can invest that back into the community. And the Recycling Exchange was paying $300,000 a year of reinvestment to deal with these hard to recycle, yes, items, and $1.5 million, they were actually able to buy the property adjacent to them and develop, wow, a huge plan for it. And so there is a lot of argument that even if you decide to go to public system, like the Cowichan Valley, yes, or private system, the Cowichan Valley decided we're going to go public. Yeah. There's 3 one-stop drop, yes, zero waste recycling centers, and there you have it. Yeah. Nanaimo's deciding to go the private route, mm-hmm, but I think that maybe if we have at least one nonprofit, yes, to be able to, yeah, to play that role of advocate, yeah, and to raise the expectation.
So in the Yellow Point area south of Nanaimo, where I live, we formed a group called the Yellow Point Ecological Society, mm-hmm, mostly about forests and watersheds, but we've done a little thing called a Roadside Trash Challenge.
Yeah.
We printed a map of the area from Google Maps, and we got about 15 volunteers who've adopting a stretch of street, and they just keep it clean in their, yeah, own time.
Yeah.
And there's a sense of pride in the community that that's happening.
Yeah.
And I mean, just a sense of us stepping forward to pick up our own, yeah, mess, yeah, and trash.
Yeah.
I do it every week on, yeah, my, every single week on my stretch of road, yeah, up to 10 items thrown away.
Yeah.
But I have to, you've been volunteering in all this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Well, look, thank you, Ben, for your volunteering effort, for helping be a leader and a visionary in all this stuff. Our time has run out here, so keep on recycling, everyone. Separate that trash. My name is Guy Dauncey. This has been the show called Change the World. And if one of my contributions to a better future is this novel I wrote called Journey to the Future, A Better World is Possible, set in the future in Vancouver when we have a zero waste world already happening. If you like this kind of show, tune in next week, and there's lots more where it comes from. Thanks for watching.